some of the things that you're seeing about COVID-19, and then we can let everybody ask questions or address some of their concerns.
Sure, Raj.
Yeah, basically we have a chat option, so anybody can post a chat question after the Dr. Garg's initial and also regarding the COVID and also about the pediatric care. And also one can post in your Facebook Live. I will read out the question to Dr. Garg. From here, Dr. Kolagar, you can take over. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Andarki Namaskaram. I'm Dr. Bhargavi Kola. Thank you, Raj, for the introduction. Like he mentioned already, I have been the Associate Professor and Departmental Vice Chair here for more than 8 years at Texas Tech University, and I'm looking forward to join the wonderful Austinite community. So first off, I would like to thank TCA for giving me an opportunity to talk about this. So today I'll be talking about parenting concerns in COVID-19 times. So andarki vache question, like what is the role of a pediatrician in COVID-19 times? So we all know that this COVID is a pandemic. So for now, for this topic, because of the time constraints, I'm just going to limit as what is coronavirus? What are we seeing? What are the challenges we're facing on a day-to-day life bearing with COVID? And moving forward, what are we going to do? So like we all know, coronavirus, also called as COVID-19, also called as SARS-CoV-2. So what does SARS stand for is Severe Acute Respiratory Distress Syndrome, which is not the first time the world is seeing this. Yes, we are seeing the pandemic for the first time, but this was also an epidemic in 2003. We all know that it is causing severe mortality as we're seeing it. We're talking about numbers, infectivity, incubation period, flattening the curve. I'm pretty sure if I keep talking about this, I will be repeating myself. But in terms of pediatric perspective, I would want to assure all the parents that so far, COVID-19 has not caused a severe impact on a pediatric age group, which is the ages of 0 to 18. Yes, some young adults and some teenagers can have some signs and symptoms depending on their pre-existing conditions. So infectivity period is the period where you actually give this virus to somebody. And according to the previous study that is done on SARS, we know that this infectivity period is very high when a person shows the signs or symptoms. So what are signs and symptoms? Again, like I said, it'll be redundant for me to repeat that: cough, cold, sneezing, fevers, something very common like flu are the symptoms of coronavirus. Now, mind you, kids will not always present with these symptoms like the adults. Kids can be completely asymptomatic, or they can have an unusual presentation. They can have vomiting, they can have diarrhea, or just a simple thing like, I don't feel myself. That could be your cautious signs that you have to look for with COVID. Now for kids, the incubation period, what we say is when you actually transmit this virus is between 5 to 14 days. And honestly, in the first few days or first 2 weeks is when you have the viral load, which is high. And then the third week is when your viral load goes down. And that is when your severity of the disease hits in. That is why you hear the doctors saying over and over again that if you have symptoms, please help us to treat you, to help you in the first few days. This is very important because if you can tackle the disease in this first few days, the outcome will be different. Now, talking about the vaccine, this is a novel virus. This is unlike another corona family, which causes other common illnesses. In pediatric age group, this is a completely different virus. So we are actually studying, not just we, meaning the doctors, but the researchers and statisticians are also studying this disease as we see this. So we don't know what will happen tomorrow. What we say today might not be true tomorrow. So there's no hard and fast rule for this. And that's why we keep changing our concerns. And as you all can see, the executive orders are also being changed. So starting today, the mayor has said, we are going to partially open the things. So it is changing every time. So this is a fluid state of coronavirus. So that's why it is very important. But one thing for sure, we know we have some information to protect our kids. Now, the second topic that I'll be touching today would be, how are we coping up with coronavirus? Schools are locked down. I mean, this has probably
Dr. Garu, we can't hear you. Anybody else here, Doctor?
I cannot. Dr. Kola, are you still on the call? Probably we lost.
She's still on the call. Likely she lost the connectivity.
Oh, okay. Let me quickly text her and to see if she can.
Sure. Yeah, she dropped out. So mostly internet connection issues.
Yeah, in West Texas, looks like they're having power outage and
Oh.
So they're going through that. She's going to join from her cell phone in a minute.
Okay, no problem.
It looks like you got a question already.
Yeah, we'll go question and answers once she completes. Most of the actually run through question and answers only.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see you.
Probably she's joining back. Is Facebook how they are submitting their questions, Andy? How are we getting the questions?
So they can submit through comment because the live stream on the TC Austin's wall. Anybody just go and.
Oh.
Search. Do you know her phone number, sir?
Yeah.
201?
Yes, it starts with 201.
Okay.
Yeah, that might be her.
Can you hear us? Yeah.
Hello, can everybody hear me? I am so sorry about this. Looks like the power outage is playing games on me here.
No problem. You can continue.
So looks like when I was about to touch the real important topic, it has to be with the boom. So yeah, so here we are talking about how to cope with COVID-19. So we all know that kids at different ages are seeing things going around. The schools have been closed for the first time in 100 years, which tells about how big of an impact COVID has in our community. So the school homeworks are being done through electronic devices. And kids see everybody moving around wearing masks and having a dramatic scene everywhere. At the minimum, they're at least seeing parents and other caregivers telling them to wash their hands repeatedly over and over again. And they also overhear this, the conversation from the parents about this contagion. And it can cause some family concerns, especially for some of us who are going through financial crisis. So this is the time where parents have to gear up and talk to kids. Yes, I know not all kids can understand what COVID is, but if we can talk to them in a clear language that they understand, to de-stress them. Because when we talk to them, their anxiety level does go down. And you don't have to be perfect in all the answers that you give, because it's okay if you do not know the answers. And oftentimes it is recommended by Academy of Pediatrics, like if a child has a question and you don't know the answer to it, if you and your child together go along and look for the answer, that is retained in their minds for a long time. And if you feel that they're anxious or they're scared of something, it will be a good discussion for you to open up and say, what are you worried about? And what is that is bothering you? And let's go and find out things together. These are the things that stay in those young minds in a long period of time. So that is the number one point that I would like to touch is anxiety levels are high, because we all know that everything is locked down, schools are closed, daycares are closed, churches until yesterday were closed, religious meets are also closed. So we are literally looking at each other every day, day in and day out. There is no routine, but we are just stressed being in the same place. So anxiety definitely goes up, and psychiatric and psychological problems are going to be on a rise. So if we start and address these problems at a very small level, with whatever way possible, I think it will be a smooth ride for most of us. And it is very important that we as parents remember that most children set their anxiety level based on parents' anxiety. And part of being child-centered in your communication is very important. And like I said, every age is different. The preschool ages, they have magical thinking, and the gowns and the mask can actually scare them out. So again, it is the parents' job to sit down and talk to them. The school-age children kind of understand it, and they try to build and master the new situations, but still they are prone to anxiety. So talking to them is important. You might ask, adolescents know everything. They think that they are, first of all, they think they're immortal at times, and they ask you sophisticated questions, but even adolescents do need your support. They still have to understand that, talking about COVID with one-on-one is very important, understanding their anxieties, because they will be frustrated at times for very small things because they have to make some sacrifices. So you have to meet a friend, you can't go meet a friend. You have to play a game, you can't go out because of COVID. So that can be a little stressful for them. That is the role of a parent at this point, that, when they're intensely preoccupied with their own self, and at times they do act selfish, which is their age, that is the time where you have to understand that that's your time. You have to sit and talk with them and tell them sacrifices and discomfort is a part of everybody's game today with COVID. So be a little mindful of your children's vulnerabilities. And then talking about routines, we all have lost our routines. So because there's no school, wake up time is different, bedtime is different, lunch, dinner, everything is moved out. Everything is out of whack. So if we have routines like what time they do the homework, what time they have a break, what time they have physical activity, and having an area of a de-stress time or a de-stress place at home where it's okay if nothing great happens in your day, but if all as a family come together at a certain spot and say, this was how my day was, would make a big difference in a child's life. Because what we want to give them is not the memories of COVID and the entire world being scared, but give them those moments that we had good bonding time as a family. We stayed strong as a family is what we want to give our children. So it's very important that you talk to them and have routines, and please stick to routines. Physical exercise, I cannot stress about this. As we always say, pediatricians are always behind this. Physical activity is very important. If the physical activity is outdoors, that will be wonderful. When I say outdoors, I don't mean gym, but definitely outside your house. And if parents can be involved with kids, this is a beautiful jubilant time for kids. I can say that they can always remember this fun times. Despite all these calamities in the world, our kids can still take some good points from this. And actually finding opportunity in the disruption is another thing. So, you can learn new hobbies. Oftentimes I have my kids teach me something new on coding so that I am learning from them, something that I know I will be teaching. So I would encourage all the moms and dads. I know, working mothers, it is a stressful thing, but, this is going to get better. So if you can stick to it and teach hobbies that you have enjoyed as kids, if you can recreate that environment for your kids, I think that would be wonderful. Coming on to my last part, how are we going to go forward with this COVID? So you all know as of today, everything is slowly starting to clear up, but I would still restrict myself to being what I was pre-COVID time. So social distancing, yes. Hand washing, hand washing, hand washing. When schools open, when kids are together in a closed environment, there's a high chance of acquiring this disease. There could be a second wave, but we don't know. Like I said, this is a novel disease, and as we move forward, we're getting more information. So possibilities of second wave could be there, and especially with the flu time, it could be deadly. So please be careful. Teach your children, make it a routine to wash hands. And this, I think we are going to cope up with this, but I guess we still have to maintain our social distancing, our hand hygiene, and then quarantining ourselves. And of course, good nutrition, physical exercise, and exercise. That's it. And I'll be open for any questions.
Let me bring up one topic, Dr. Kola. We are seeing a lot of that here in around Rockers. I mean, now the schools are closed, and we don't know whether they'll open as planned in August or not, but hopefully they will open. But this is the time for well checks, right? I mean, a lot of us take our kids
Correct.
through annual well checks at pediatric practices. One of the questions that parents are asking is, considering the current exposure outside the home, when you go outside the home and visit a pediatric practice, is it still worth going through those annual well checks at this point in time, right? What's your take on that, Dr. Kola?
That's
Are
a
they
wonderful
still
question,
important?
Raj. Thanks for bringing that up. Yes, well child cares are very important. They're very crucial. Oftentimes, we link well child visits only with vaccines. Now, well child by itself, it says head to toe. So you discuss everything. And it's not just a physical health, it's emotional health, it's mental health, it's psychological health. So I would highly recommend, and Academy of Pediatrics stresses on the point that we have to continue doing the well child visits. Now, I'm pretty sure all the pediatricians around the United States have made a separate scheme or a policy wherein they have, like, for instance, in our clinics, we make sure that we actually ask you a COVID questionnaire. So there's a screening tool before you even enter the office. And then once you're cleared, I mean, the parent and the patient, once they clear the COVID screening, they will be allowed to enter inside. And we don't allow anybody to wait in the waiting areas because of the risk of exposure. So they directly go into the room. They'll wait for the nurse to come into the room, have the vitals done, be examined by the pediatrician or the provider, have their vaccines, and they will check out. So they will not see anybody in the waiting room. They feel like they're the only ones coming in and going out. That is how crucial and that is how careful we are being at this time. But I would definitely encourage your routine health checkups, because especially in this time where everything is going on and you don't know, you don't have questions, you don't want to end up in an emergency room. You want to talk to your pediatrician about it. So this are highly recommended by all the pediatricians.
Thank you, Dr. Kolagaru. We have one question from our own team. Mr. Kishore Pamu is our treasurer. Because of this long time lockdown, are there any psychological impacts on the kids? As a parent, what we can do help kids?
Yes, sir, they are, because this is all new for our kids. And actually, I have had patients where they say the schools are closed, did I do something wrong? So this is how the thinking of the small children are. And that is when the role of parent should be highlighted. And this is when you sit down and talk to them. If you have a one-on-one discussion, whatever you learn, you discuss with them at their level, that will definitely open up. And I'm pretty sure when we say something to our kids, our smart kids are good enough to go and Google them. And please don't be offended when they ask you some sophisticated questions and something which is challenging you. If you can go ahead, find out the answer on your own and actually sit with your child and answer the questions together, that will be a very good learning curve for our kids.
All right, thank you. The next question, maybe Raj Garu or yourself itself. If any parent feel like their kid got COVID or the symptoms, can we get into any of these centers and get tested, Andy, or these are not for?
Sure.
So again, like I said,
go ahead.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Raj. Go ahead.
I was going to just touch on what we are doing here in Austin, Dr. Kola, and probably you can answer the clinical side of that. So right now, not everybody is capable of doing the testing. And మా centersలో we have some basic testing, but at the same time, health department is asking us to be really, really careful. For example, if we test somebody who think they have the symptoms, when we test them, there is a chance that we are going to expose everybody else around in that center to that virus. So we are trying to be very, very careful, and we are trying to do testing only on those cases where they cannot get help anywhere else. But if we kind of know that family has got exposed to COVID-19 through friends, relatives, or through some sort of travel, then we are directly sending them to some of the testing centers we know here in Austin. And Dell Children's has started testing centers that they have not publicly advertised to everybody. but we know where those testing centers are. So if we get calls, then we can direct those patients appropriately. I mean, short answer to your question is we don't have the full testing capability. We are doing testing on an absolutely as needed basis, but we know where to send them if that testing needs to be done.
There is a CDC guideline, a questionnaire screening, and it is again that is changing probably every month. So based on that screening tool, the doctors, whoever your pediatrician is, would want to decide. And if the index of suspicion is high, they would send you to a place which actually does. And in our location here, we have some walk-in clinics which can do it. And the health department would be your best resort. And some of the private labs like LabCorp and Quest are also doing. So all that you would need is probably an order form from your physician to have it tested. And I agree with Raj saying that if you think you have COVID positive, it would not be an ideal situation to expose, especially those young ones and newborns who will be in the clinic. So instead of directly walking into the clinic, I would say, pick up a phone, talk to your doctor, discuss what the situation is, and then take it from there.
We have one question from the team itself. Some are saying that at this time, eating ice creams or drinking cold items can be risky due to COVID-19. Is it true?
There is no anecdotal report on that. I know that's a wonderful question where we hear things because it's electronic media. It is, everything is on internet right now. All that you have to do is type in some words in Dr. Google and he will take you everywhere. Unfortunately, he didn't go to medical school. So like I said, COVID-19 is the new virus. We are looking at this based on its sister infection in 2003. We're trying to compare and look at the trials on it. There is no say that clear to say that cold stuff is going to cause it and warm stuff is going to prevent, or hot stuff is going to prevent it. We definitely, as doctors, we suggest drinking room temperature water, something lukewarm water, because we want to improve the blood circulation. So if you have some inflammation in your throat, that is what we recommend. But for COVID, I don't think we have any anecdotal report based on that. And coming to that point of hearing the information everywhere, I would recommend and request sincerely, everybody, please stick to authentic sources. CDC.gov is something that keeps itself updated every 24 hours. And your local health department, probably they do it much faster job than CDC. That is more reliable information rather than Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or WhatsApp.
Dr. Kola, kind of a follow-up question on that. I mean, now several of us have stopped eating outside, right? I mean, what is the possibility of we getting that transmitted through the food we buy outside? For example, you went to a grocery store or you went to like Dairy Queen or some other place. If there is somebody within that center who got infected, is there a chance that we could get it because we bought our stuff from there, either groceries or pre-cooked food?
So to answer that question, Raj, the answer, in a summary, I would say yes, there are possibilities, because I think we have had cases where a couple moved from Waco, traveled to Austin to eat at a restaurant, and both of them suffered COVID-19. Now, going on to the question previously, cold and hot stuff, most of the times the food is hot. So if hot kills it, that should have killed the virus, but why didn't it? It's mostly the handling of the food. So we know when we are home, we wash our hands religiously. We know what goes in, and we're very careful and a little skeptical talking about, Telugu and Indian people. We know what goes in, how much masala goes in, and how we're cooking and how we're preparing it. So we know what is going in. But oftentimes at restaurants, the way they handle the food is not as hygienic and or not as clean as we do it at our home. So yes, there is a possibility of spreading through that.
Thank you. Going back to the very first question about testing, recently we, personally myself, received an email from one of my child's urgent care facility in Round Rock. They are saying they are actually offering antibody testing for COVID-19. So you guys think like you are going to also do the similar in the future?
Raj, do you want to take up the question, or do you want me to take it up?
Yeah, I can probably add the details. I know, Dr. Kola, please add more depth to that. But Definitely, we don't have any plans of doing antibody testing at this point, and maybe Dr. Kola can get into the clinical details of that. I think based on what I heard from several of our physicians, those tests are still inconclusive, and there are several kids that are not performing well where we could use them at a mass scale. But Dr. Kola, go ahead and add to that. Or, if I said something wrong, please correct it as well.
That's a very in-depth question, Andy, and I think that is the hot topic now, antibodies testing, Andy. If we had an answer for that, I think vaccine would have been ready. But I think if we make a vaccine this year, that will be a breakthrough in science, because for any vaccine, if you've seen it starting from polio vaccine, it takes a long time to actually know the disease and how it happens. And there are phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials to actually make it possible. And coronavirus is something which we're expecting an antigenic changes, meaning the virus today might be different, next year might be different. So it is quite challenging for the biochemists or the statisticians or the researchers to make a vaccine for it. This is a trial phase to see the antibody or the plasma thing kind of works. Again, the way this virus works is completely different. For the first 2 weeks where you have an increased viral load, but that is when you actually transmit the disease to the other, maybe you'll have subtle symptoms. But once the viral load hits its peak, it's not actually the virus that is killing you, but it is your overreactive immune system. That is what we call a cytokine burst. So it's your immunity which is trying to devour those cells which have the virus in it. So in that point, if you are to be admitted in a hospital, you're very close to having a severe respiratory disease. Even if you give you antibodies, how is it going to help? Because the damage has already happened. Like I said, this is very inconclusive. I mean, we need more trials, more study, more number, and more power to this study to understand very clearly how this disease progresses and at what point we can intervene with it. And, you know, I cannot stress on the importance of immunity at this point. So that's why we say drink fluids, exercise, be happy, be healthy, because when you're happy, your happy hormones kind of help you against your stress. And when you're stressed out, even a cold can act like COVID.
True. Right. Thank you. Yeah, it caught my surprise when I saw an email from a local child's clinic saying we're going to test antibodies. So you kind of explained.
Right. And yeah, and you know, surprisingly, I'm very happy to say that I'm a pediatrician, because my patient population has not been suffered as opposed to adults, because mortality in kids comparatively chala takku andi. When you age, when you're more than 55, the mortality increases exponentially. And if you looked at the people who have deceased, expired from COVID, it's mostly majority that number.
Thank you. One more question. You kind of addressed during your initial explanation on this situation. For little kids, okay, we can control because they don't have much freedom they can do without the parents. But what about teens? They're kind of bored now, and at least my personal experience, I have a teen son. He thinks he's immune, like COVID came and passed him and he's ready to go. I cannot stop him because he got a driver's license, he got a car. So how I can prepare him for not to get into trouble.
Right. I guess being a teen parent is a second phase of sleepless nights. One is when they are infants, and then is this period, especially when they start driving. So yeah, like I said, adolescence is an age which is very immune to everything. In fact, you know, even for us, when we preach them or teach them something, you know, we have to get to the language that they like. So you have to find a soft spot for your son, and only you and the mother will know what it is. But again, they will ask sophisticated questions, and you know, you have to focus on the fact that it is okay for them to ask, and it's okay for you not to know it. And if you can challenge him, he probably will come up with a better answer for you, and that will be a learning curve for him. Because when it comes from parents, అదేదో అంటారు కదండి గర్క ముర్గి దాల్ బరాబర్ టైప్ లో, it's probably not very effective. But if they find out and they research on their own, probably that information will be much stronger and it will be retained for long. And yes, I agree with you that almost all the teenagers that I have been exposed to think they're immune to COVID. But when you talk to them about the intricacies, why you need to protect and why, even though you're immune, how are you playing a role in the society that you limit the disease or you limit the spread? What precautions that you need to take? I think that will open up another channel.
Yeah, good one. Thank you. All right, for audience, if you want any more questions, please post in chat or raise your hand. I can actually open up your mic. You can talk to the doctor directly.
Oh, somebody has a question.
Yeah, I think Srinivas.
The question, Dr. Kola, is due to the sudden COVID-19 crisis situation. We see kids acting stressed or depressed due to missing school activities. Is this going to affect their daily routine?
I think most of us have actually experienced the answer for it. Yes, because there is no structure. There is no routine, there is lack of structure, which is actually stressing the kids out. It is not summertime, but again, they are home. Schools are closed. They're missing their friends. They're missing their dear ones. They want to be on the PE. They want to play games. They're missing their tournaments. So it is taking a toll on them at a much personal level. And not all kids are efficient to express the changes that they are seeing in a day-to-day life. So if kids don't express it, it is the job or it is the duty of the parent to make them open. So sit with them like that, like I initially said in my talk, have a de-stress time and a de-stress place in your home where you don't have to do much. Just come down to a point. Maybe it can be a living room or maybe it can be a kid's room. Sit down. So how was your day? What happened? And then they probably will open up what is worrying them. And when they raise a question that this is troubling me, that'll be your chance to jump in as a parent. And the impact probably will start very slow, but since we don't know when the complete clearance is going to be, this is going to be for a long time. This is going to be chronic. So I would encourage all the parents to empower themselves, learn more, talk more, be with your kids, give them memory, let them cherish these moments. Like I said, make an opportunity during this time.
We have one audience raise his hand. Mr. Srinivas Garu, you can say.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Srinivas. So I also know Raj, and I take my kids to the pediatric center of Round Rock.
Hello, Andy.
Thank you.
Hi, Raj. So yeah. So I have a question. Like my son has bronchitis kind of thing, minor asthma case. So he gets up in the night and then coughs sometimes, like all of a sudden in the night, and then. So I'm trying to understand how do we differentiate with this COVID-19 thing and the actual thing. And so what we need to watch. Basically.
So that's a very good clinical question. Thanks for raising that for me, Srinivas Garu. So like you know, you have seen your child suffer from asthma, correct?
Yeah, not too much, but this year he had more of cough symptoms compared to last.
Right. And this is springtime. So yes, there are going to be some seasonal allergies. There's going to be some environmental changes. And you know the telltale signs of asthma. So we for sure, it's hard to say that COVID will be more common in asthmatics or asthma predisposes to COVID. There is no such literature out there yet. But I would say anything that causes any difference in the way that he usually presents. And for COVID-19, the symptoms will not resolve with albuterol. If your son's symptoms are getting better with any bronchodilator medication, either it can be a nebulization or it can be an inhaler, you see a change, then it is not COVID. So rest assured it's not COVID. If he has some low-grade fevers, please talk to your pediatrician and have them examined. When you listen to the lungs, there's a lot of information that comes up. And you know, if he's asthmatic, then you would want to probably do something like physical activity and see how he does. If it is just following the trends of his usual self, then probably it's not COVID.
Okay, thanks for the answer. I have one other side question to it. Like a lot of people use humidifiers in the nights and all. Is it? I mean, I heard that there are pros and cons. I mean, like it kind of makes more. Fill the lungs that way if we use a lot of humidifier. Is that true? Or?
So that I have to answer that based on, it has to be a case by case thing. So it depends on what kind of asthma you have, what is the triggers, how do you behave. So based on that, some of them use hot humidifiers, some of them use cold humidifiers. So next time when you drop in Round Rock, let me know.
Okay, sure. Thanks.
Srinivas garu, hope Sai is doing well. And I have a follow-up question or topic, Dr. Kola, I want to quickly bring up. And now we are hearing and seeing telehealth a lot. And as I just announced at the beginning of the call, we have our own telehealth platform, kidsfirstdoc.com, right? Dr. Kola, can you kind of share some of your thoughts on telehealth in general and some of the conditions that we could address via a telehealth visit?
So I cannot thank telehealth enough in this time, especially during COVID time when everybody is anxious, even the doctors. I mean, we are scared. We don't know if our patients are carrying it. So this has given us a beautiful platform to actually, especially the patients that we know, how they behave and how they react. So we've been with some families, so we understand them. So this telehealth platform has been like a boon to us. In case we have to, address minor issues like your upper respiratory infection or a rash or a sore throat, that we can probably very safely and comfortably call in antibiotics, we can do that. And we have our chronic asthmatic patients, we just follow them up based on their questionnaire. We ask them, your doctor asks you questions and you answer them. And based on that, they'll probably ask you to do some exercise in front of your camera that will assess your ability. And then we continue to give the refills. ADHD, depression, anxiety, these are the things where you want to open up with your doctor one-on-one, face-to-face. And telehealth gives a beautiful platform for that. And also for newborn cases where the mom is scared and she's a new mother, she doesn't want to go to the ER, she doesn't know if she has to wake the doctor up in the middle of the night. This can be this can be a blessing.
Thanks, Dr. Kola.
Yes, still waiting for a few more questions. Anybody else raise your hand? I can open your mic, or you can put a question in your chat. Oh, okay. We have a chat question. It's from Dushyant, is actually one of our executive committee members. Kids are immune to COVID-19, as this is a true statement. If the kids get infected, is it safe to assume their recovery would be faster as compared to an adult recovery?
Could you repeat the question one more time, a little slower, please?
No problem. Kids are immune to COVID-19. Is this a true statement? If the kids get infected, is it safe to assume their recovery would be faster as compared to an adult recovery?
So there are two parts to this question, Andy. First part is, are kids immune to COVID-19? The answer is no. But the second part is, if they have COVID-19, do they recover faster? Yes, I would say they would probably recover faster. And in fact, if you compare any disease in the world, kids are resilient. They're beautiful. They come up with a lot of energy, and they recover much faster. That's the reason why in spite of all the antibiotics, they're still strong and they keep going. But talking about will they be immune forever, I don't have an answer to that question. Like I said, COVID is a new virus. COVID-19 is something very new. It's novel, and this can change. And based on the antigenic drift, like remember, if we are ever immune to flu vaccine, that will help us. That will be a boon. But we have to take flu vaccine every year. Why? Because it changes its nature. So we don't know about COVID, if that is going to change its nature every year. So we will never be immune to that. Or things can change. I could be wrong. So as of now, I don't have a clear, true, definitive answer. But considering the fact that kids are resilient, they would definitely recover. But identifying the signs and symptoms early on is very important.
Thank you. Any more questions, chat, or raise your hand? I can open your mic. Meanwhile, one more question from my side, Dr. Garu. As you know, many, at least Indian parents, some parents, their kids are born in India, came to US, still in under 15 years. So they have many Indian shots in India, like BCG and other stuff. Is
Right.
anything going to help against COVID?
As far as I know, as far as my medical knowledge goes on, BCG can provide your immunity for tuberculous meningitis. This is to prevent that. And the efficacy of this vaccine fades off after 10 years of administration. So against COVID, again, this is a totally new topic. There are some case reports saying that it could be, again, the reliable source, we don't have it enough from NIH, which is the National Institute of Health, or from Johns Hopkins, or even from Harvard, stating that BCG is providing immunity. In that case, we all Indians are immune, but I don't see the case.
For prior question, there's a follow-up from Dushan. Is regarding kids getting COVID-19. Follow-up to question: if one gets infected with COVID-19, a newer strain of COVID would make them immune, or any chance they have tendency to get infected with the new strain of this virus?
I think Dushankar is interested to know about the future, too early. But it's about the strain. So unless because this is a new strain. So SARS-CoV-1 was in 2003. That had very much similarities to SARS-CoV-2. That remained an epidemic because that was only affecting southern parts of China. Now we have the entire world. It's a pandemic. So we don't know the new strain, what it's going to be like. I hope I answered your question. So I think I cannot hit on the point just to say yes or no, but it is still under trial.
Dushyant, you want to follow up? Your mic is open.
Yes, Andy. And thank you, Bhargavi Garu. It's definitely insightful. The reason in Enduku Adugutunnanante, because of the fact that just looking at what's going on right now, I think because most states are opening up, with most people suspecting that there could be a newer strain of virus coming up, at least in the next in the next fall, or anything to actually not look forward to. But that's why my questions are more directed towards what might happen, and especially with kids, assuming that what you just said, the recovery would be faster. We don't want the kids definitely to come home and infect the adults, where the recovery could be.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Right. So you're talking about the immediate future, what it could be. So yeah, we don't know if there's going to be a second wave, because some of the countries have seen a second wave. So the answer to that would be, we are not really sure if it is the relapse of the original one, or is it a completely new strain. As you all know, this is a zoonotic disease, which was not actually its original form. This was something created in a lab. So this is against the nature. So it is a mutagenic strain. So it is very hard to predict what will happen and how that might affect. So in terms of relapsing, I would say after COVID, if any adult gets infected with COVID, definitely their immunity and their ability to perform normally would take time, and there could be some changes, because based on their medications that they have used, or without medications, there would be a change in their original way. So if there is a relapse, then they should probably have them tested again, because once you hit by this, you never know the second time when it hits you, it could be either severe or it could be less severe. So that's why I think when I opened up the initial talk, that when the schools are going to be open, so we all have to assume that everybody else has COVID around you and behave in such way. So that way you can spread the disease less, and again, take care of yourself. So the more anal you are about your hygiene and your protection and your social distancing, and I would definitely recommend having masks. I don't know how the rule is going to be about the masks once the schools are reopened, but having a mask is definitely helpful than having none. I know the percentage differs, and if you and a person opposite to you has a mask, the transmission rate is much, much less. So, I mean, honestly, I don't think I have given you a very satisfying answer to this, but this is all we know right now.
Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Bhargavi. I have one small question. So, is an occasional low-grade fever like 99 degrees in kids a sign to watch during this crisis? Because other than that, there are no other symptoms like cough, nothing.
Not to worry if it is just a low-grade fever, sir. And usually, honestly, we pediatricians consider fever only when it touches 100.4. 99, we don't even say it's a fever.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello. We cannot hear you, Andy. I think you are trying to say something, but Dr. Kola, sorry, go ahead.
So my bad. Doctor, when you're answering last question, for Dushyant question, you made a statement saying this virus is made in a lab. Is this something confirmed in the doctors community, or we are just stating some fact?
This is not behaving as a normal coronavirus, sir. So normal coronavirus family is like a normal flu. And if it behaves like a normal coronavirus, there is no vaccine for it. But this is behaving something very different. And the way it originated, I think we have some, not a concrete, but something that points to the wet market in southern China. Again, we don't have any short reports on that because we have to prove on it. So we know for sure it is definitely a mutagenic strain. So we don't know how it happened. There's just, like I said, there's no anecdotal report. It probably could have, or it could have changed in the animals when it has been, when it moved on. So it's definitely not nature-made coronavirus. It's not behaving like that. That's why it's a COVID-19 strain.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. There's so much discussion going on that topic, so just to be very curious.
Dr.
Yeah,
Kola,
I'm pretty sure your adolescent son will probably ask you this question. So yeah.
Dr. Kola, there is one other topic I want to quickly bring up. I know you and Dr. Dasri have done a lot of work in managing asthmatic kids within the primary care office setting. What we are seeing in Austin is, we are trying to do that across our 5 centers here in Austin area, but typically most of the asthma conditions are referred out to specialists. Most of the primary care practices are kind of referring these kids out, even for starting cases of asthma. Can you touch upon, once you start Nurture Pediatrics here in Cedar Park, a new location, what are some of the plans that you and Dr. Dasri have around managing asthma? Because that is one of conditions that we see here in Austin a lot because of the seasonal allergies and environmental allergies that happen all through the year.
Sure, Raj. So my goal would be to actually educate and empower the parents and the patients both at the same time. So when I sit with an asthmatic patient, it's not just what medications you need, because there is more of other things. It's not just the impact asthma has at that particular time, but it is the risk and the ability for the kid to function normally. I, as a pediatrician, believe that every asthma child should behave and enjoy everything that a non-asthmatic child does. But for that, it needs a little bit of education, tweaking their habits a little bit, controlling educations a little bit, making some small minor changes at a household level, and complying with their doctor is very, very important. As a matter of fact, as a part of my asthma outreach program, I have met with Peter Vanderkay, who is the 3-time champion in swimming, and he has sent me a personal message, and I can share that with you, saying how crucial the doctors played in his life so that he reached to so many gold medals in his life. So that's an eye-opener for most of the teenagers who think they don't have to take the medications. And oftentimes they don't know how to use the medications. And we also just focus on the present symptoms. But I believe it's a chronic disease. It affects your day-to-day life. So it is important for me to understand how the lungs are affecting the child's day-to-day activities and the parents' day-to-day activities. So I do something called as a pulmonary function test. So that way I can know if I have to increase the medication, have to lower the medications, because both are possible with asthma. And if you are compliant, if you're watching everything, maybe you probably wouldn't even need to take your control medications. Again, it has to go over a period of time. So asthma is not a 10-day treatment and you're done. It has to be understood in a very personal level. So me and Dr. Dasari sit and we assess the parent and the patient together. We're going to assess the whole family, because when a child gets sick, it's not just the child, it's the entire family that gets into it. So we want to help them live a normal life, enjoy everything that they can do. And oftentimes asthma is triggered with allergies, so we will be doing some allergy testing also, a skin to skin testing in our own clinic, where we can tell them what to avoid, and if need be, we can even introduce them on immunotherapy.
I think once Nurture Pediatrics opens up, I think that service would be much appreciated here, Dr. Kola, because we see that everywhere, right? Not only with kids who come to our practices, but we hear that all the time from daycares, schools, and everywhere we go here in the community.
Definitely. Whatever I have learned here, I will definitely utilize to help the community.
There is one more question, Dr. Kola, that came up on the chat. I can read it out. We are told that daycare Montessori schools, it's from Srinivas Garu. I'll read the question again. We are told that daycare Montessori schools would start operating very soon, probably in a week. Is it safe to send our kids so they can continue their school activities, or should we just let them stay home as much as possible, since we have a chance to work from home for time being?
So an answer for that would be, as a parent, I would want you to go back to the Montessori or the daycare center and analyze and assess with your own eye. What are the measures they're going to take to have the separation? If they have a case, are they prepared to handle it? How are they going to take care of your child? And would you, after listening to all the answers, satisfactorily have the courage to put your child in? So I would think it's a personal question, but if they are equipped with everything, I wouldn't force them to put them in it, but I want you as a parent, because as physician, we probably spend 40 to 60 minutes, but as a parent, you spend 24 hours with them. Nobody knows your child better than you are. So how safe is your child there? Please talk to the authorities, make sure everything is safe, and only when you're convinced, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we have one more question. I think Raj Garu, maybe you can answer.
Sure. I think it's from Srinivas Garu again. We are working on the date and day. We know that location will be called as Nurture Pediatrics. We know Dr. Dasari and Dr. Kola will be the physicians there. We roughly know the start date. Our goal is to open it up by July 1st. And it will be in the pediatric specialty building right next to the Cedar Park Regional Medical Center. I will send out more information as we get closer to the opening date, and maybe Brahma Garu and TCA can help us to probably do like a launch party or something like that, where we can kind of let everybody in the community know about the location. But start date could go few days here and there, and our goal is to work hard towards starting on July 1st. But we are still working on few details which got delayed because of the current situation around COVID-19. We will definitely share that location, and as and when we have final information. But for now, we know it will be in the pediatric specialty building. It will be called Nurture Pediatrics, and it will be roughly in the first week or second week of July. But exact date would be something I have to send it.
I agree with Raj and Srinivas Garu. If it's nothing, then please, you have to blame COVID for all this.
Any more questions? All right. I think we are done. We want to conclude. Before we conclude, we want to share something from TCS side. So TCA, we have a helpline for COVID-19 situation. If anybody need any kind of help, they can call this helpline number. we'll do our best to address the issue. Students, anything from any community, that should be fine. We have a TCA resource page for COVID-19 in our website. It got all local details regarding COVID-19, where to go, how to approach doctors, stuff like that. And if you want to reach us through our website, we have our website, austintelugu.org, contact. Also, we are collecting small donations for COVID-19 through our PayPal account. This will be used only for COVID-19 related charity. We have requests for students and others for groceries, stuff like that. So any donation will work. We'll appreciate highly. And for Facebook users or anybody, please like us on Facebook to see this live or any upcoming programs. We have two. One is you can add them as a friend, Telugu Austin, and or we have a page, Telugu Cultural Association Austin. If you simply like, you can see all this program details. We don't spam, so only TCA authenticated programs we publish and share, nothing else. Adjan, before Adjan, I want to open mic for our president. Yeah,
Randy, thanks for joining. So already Venkat told about this one, COVID-19. We are getting a lot of calls from the students. If you guys can help anything, it doesn't matter how much it is. $20 also we can give one rice bag to the students. Please help that one. That is very helpful. So thanks for joining. That's all. Raj, if you have, if you need anything, just ping us or send an email. We will take care of that.
Thanks a lot, Andy. Thanks for inviting us and thanks for organizing this. We are happy to help with anything, Andy. Some of your efforts around COVID-19, I'll call you separately. Yes. But please let us know if there is anything that we as Pediatric Center of Round Rock can do for TCA. I can call you privately and I can support you.
Sure.
One final question to Dr. Kola, I forgot to ask. When you will be available in Austin, Andy, like if you are any situation, if you want to reach out to you?
Like Raj already said, Andy, we are looking forward. We are targeting to July 1st, but again, with the inconsistencies of the situation, we don't know.
I'll send out a notification, Venkat Garu. Once we have more details, I'll reach out to Brahma Garu or you through TCA and we'll send out the information.
Yeah, on public forum, is it okay if somebody reaches to TCA, any parents with any concern? What is the best way to reach Dr. Garu?
Email.
Email, okay. All right. All right. Thanks again, Dr. Garu, for coming and sharing your wealth of knowledge. On behalf of TCA, we truly appreciate your efforts.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for having me here. I hope everybody is staying safe. Stay home, stay safe, and have a happy weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Kola.